Imagine buying a house in Melbourne right now for $950,000 and watching it hit $1.1 million by end of 2026. That's $150,000 in equity in just under 12 months. That sounds too good to be true, right? While most Australians are sitting on the sidelines, paralyzed by fear and confusion, a small group of investors are quietly positioning themselves for what could be the most predictable property boom in the decade. Hi, I'm Moxin Reza. In the next 12 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why 2026 could be your year to build serious wealth through property, or watch from the sidelines where everyone makes money. Let's be honest right now. The Australian property market feels very confusing. There is advisors and property profits and gurus every bend around the corner. The interest rates have been cut 3 times in 2025, dropping from 4.35% to 3.60%. That sounds great, right? But here's the catch. Most Australians are still frozen. They're asking, are the rates going to keep dropping? Where should I buy? What should I buy? Would the prices fall? Can I even afford to get into the market? And while average person is stuck into this analysis paralysis, asking these questions month after month, something extraordinary is happening beneath the surface. We're talking about major banks, KPMG, NAB, Domain, CoreLogic, all are pointing to the same thing. 2026 is shaping up to be the growth year. We're not talking about crazy boom. We're not talking about a crash, but a strategic, predictable, profitable window of opportunity. And here's the brutal truth that most won't tell you. The opportunity has an expiration date. And if you're not positioning yourself right now, you'll be the one watching property prices climb from the sideline while your deposit loses purchasing power. So the real question is not, will 2026 boom? The question is, when should you be ready by? Let's look at the market trends and the predictions for 2026. Let's cut through the noise, and here is what the actual data is telling us. Every major forecasting institution in Australia, we're talking about KPMG, NAB, CoreLogic, Domain, is predicting national house prices growth between 4% and 7% in 2026. Now, this is not a speculation anymore. That's a consensus. But here is where it gets really interesting. KPMG just dropped a bombshell prediction predicting Melbourne would be the top performing city in 2026, with house prices rising 6.6% and units surging by 7.1%. Now, why is this shocking? Because Melbourne has been the underdog since 2022, while Sydney and Brisbane and Adelaide and Perth have been surging. Melbourne was that slow child lagging behind, and that's exactly what makes this opportunity so powerful. So what happens when the markets that have been suppressed for so long finally catches up? Also, mark this 7% across Victoria means that there would be areas that would grow by 20 to 30%, and there would be areas that would only grow by 1 to 2%. So the key is, where does this explosive growth happens? That is the key to find. And here are the key drivers. The severe undersupply, years of subdued construction activity have created a housing shortage that is about to collide with the interest rates falling. So think about it. Interest rates are forecast to drop to 2.8% by end of 2026. That's 3 or 4 rate cuts or more rate cuts coming up. Each 0.25% cut adds between $12,000 to $35,000 to borrowing capacity. So do the maths. If you're an average earner, that's potentially $48,000 to $140,000 more borrowing power by this time next year. What happens when tens and thousands of buyers suddenly can afford more, but there is not enough homes to go around? It's not that the house prices are changing. It's because people have more borrowing power to pay more for them. Exactly. This is what increases the prices. Which cities and which suburbs will boom? Now, here is where most investors get it wrong. They chase last year's winners. They buy where markets have already gone up, but smart investors, they look forward. They follow the fundamentals. So let me break down the top 5 cities positioned to boom in 2026. Let's start with number 5, Adelaide, the value king. Now, Adelaide has been growing consistently over the last almost 5 years. I projected that's the highest growth in the nation. Areas like Australian around 19% growth thanks to Western Sydney Airport. Can you see the pattern? The infrastructure drives the growth, and it always will be. Number 3 is Brisbane. they're steady performer. Consistent 8 to 9% growth. Suburbs like Eagle Farm, Pinkenba, Kapalba, they're forecasted to hit 9.9% growth thanks to the Olympic infrastructure development that is going to create consistent job opportunities. And number 2 on the Perth, which is back on the market, the growth champion. Now, Perth has been on the fire for the last 2 years. And we were previously making an argument that Perth has hit its maturity. But with the new government incentives, part of Perth's that are first home buyers demand driven are back on the growth radar. We're talking about 22 suburbs that are crossing the $1 million mark in 2026. We're talking about areas like Royalstone, currently sitting at 992, projected to hit 1.12 million. Bladdervest 720,000 with 15.2% growth, perfect for first home buyers. And number 1, of course, Melbourne, the comeback kid. Here is why Melbourne wins the turnaround story. After lagging for 3 years, Melbourne has severe housing undersupply. The most interest rate sensitivity, meaning rate cuts, help Melbourne buyers the most. Most infrastructure projects are coming to an end. We're talking about Airport Rail, Northeast Link, Suburban Rail Loop, Metro Tunnel, you name it, and these projects are coming to the finish. So what are the hottest Melbourne suburbs? Let's start off with the north. We're talking about Preston at $950,000 with 5.5% growth, or around circa 3.7% rental yield. The gentrification sweet spot with townhouses selling at around $700,000 to $750,000. You talk about Reservoir sitting at $900,000 with 5.6% growth opportunity, still sort of affordable, but massive upside, and units still selling at around $600,000 to $650,000. We're talking about Carrum Downs and around selling at about $700,000 to $750,000 with 7% growth projected. We're talking about Keilor Downs selling between $750,000 to $800,000 with 10 to 15% growth projected. Greensboro, Mundine around, and Sunshine West, Aldeer, and Albion selling at around $700,000. Now, one of the last ones is, while this is not Metro Melbourne, we also have Geelong and pockets of Geelong at around mid $700,000, projected to grow between 15 to 20% as well. Now, I know what you're thinking. People are like, Moxin, I can't afford Melbourne. Hold on, because I'm about to share next on how you can actually get into these markets, even if you're starting from zero. So let's talk about the investment strategies to capitalize in 2026. Here's the truth about property investing that no one talks about, and it's about timing the market perfectly. It's about positioning yourself strategically. Let me give you 3 proven strategies that's going to help you. Number 1, the first home buyer revolution. On October 1st, 2025, Australia introduced the most significant first home buyers reforms in decades. Here is what's changed. Unlimited places, no more quotas anymore. No income limits, even middle and high income earners qualify. Massive price cap increase. We're talking about Sydney going from $900,000 to $1.5 million, 67% increase. Melbourne going from $650,000 to $950,000. Brisbane going from $700,000 to $1 million. Perth going from $600,000 to $850,000. Do you understand what this means? You can now buy a $1.5 million property in Sydney with just 5% deposit under the home guarantee scheme. That's $75,000 deposit instead of $300,000 deposit. This changes everything. First home buyers are about to flood the market with purchasing power they didn't have or existed 6 months ago. What happens when demand surges but the supply stays low? Now, your price point is to focus on lower price point in each of these areas. Like first home buyers will take your price points and go to the upper limits of those government schemes. For example, in Victoria, you should be buying at around $700,000 and $750,000 price point, and they will hit to $900,000 by the end of the year. Strategy number 2, the infrastructure play. Here is a rule I live by. Buy the rumor, sell the news. Major infrastructure projects boost property prices by 7 to 15% when they're completed, but smart investors, they buy before the project actually finishes. In fact, they buy even when the project is not still even announced. Look at these opportunities. We talk about Sydney Metro West, Sydney Western Suburbs, nearly seeing 7 to 12% growth. Melbourne Airport Rail or Northeast Link project suburbs along that corridor gaining 8 to 15% growth. Brisbane Cross River Rail already driving growth in surrounding areas. We are also talking about cities connecting links between Brisbane and Gold Coast. So if you buy in those corridors connecting, you'll see some serious growth coming through. The key is getting 12 to 18 months before the completion. That's when you capture maximum upside. And strategy 3, the 80-20 leverage rule. Now, this is where most investors blow up. They over leverage, they get greedy. Listen carefully. Never exceed 80% loan to value ratio on investment properties, period. Here is why. If you buy with 95% leverage and the market corrects, say 10 to 15%, which happens every cycle, you are in negative equity. You are trapped. You can't refinance, you can't sell, you're bleeding cash. But if you maintain 80% LVR, you have 20% equity buffer to ride out the corrections, refinance flexibility, use that 15% as cash flow, manage the cash flow protections. I've seen too many investors get wiped out because they get greedy during booms. Don't be that person. The 3 pillars of safe property investing is maximum 80% LVR. You can only go up to 90 or 95% LVR if you have the cash flow and the income to support it. 6 months of cash reserve, and buy for fundamentals, not with emotions. Follow these rules and you will survive every market cycle. All right, let me show you how this works in real life. Let's meet Sarah and James. In 2029, they were exactly where you might have been right now. Overwhelmed, confused, scared, not ready to take action. Back in 2019, combined income of $120,000 only, saved the deposit of only $60,000, looking at Sydney property median price of $850,000. Like most people, they were paralyzed. Should we wait? Are the price going to crash? What if we lose our jobs? But here is what they did differently. Instead of chasing the eastern suburbs, they followed infrastructure. They found Austral, a suburb near planned Western Sydney Airport, median price of around $620,000 at that time. They bought a 4-bedroom house with 10% deposit of $62,000, 90% LVR, not ideal but manageable for owner-occupiers, 4% rental yield in the surrounding areas, which was great. Fast forward to 2025, because they picked the right location, the same property, drum rolls, now worth $1.1 million. They've gained $480,000 in equity in just under 6 years. At 80% LVR, they have now $430,000 in usable equity. And do you know what Sarah told me when I interviewed her last month? She said, Moxin, we were terrified. Everyone told us we were buying at the peak, but we focused on fundamentals, the infrastructure, the population growth, the undersupply, and it paid off. Today, they're using that equity to buy their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th property, this time coming back to Melbourne and Queensland, positioning themselves for strategic 2026 price increases. And their strategy, very simple. They're following the foundational method or the few method. Buy where the infrastructure is going, not where it's already been. Focus on fundamentals, the jobs, the population, the schools, and hold for long term. 6 to 7 years to 8 years minimum. Leverage conservatively, never overextend. And here is the critical part. Sarah and James aren't the property geniuses. They are not developers. They are just everyday Australians who made one strategic decision right at the time, and that decision changed their financial dynamics and financial future forever. The question is, will you make yours? So let's bring this all together. Here is what we know. Major institutions are forecasting 4 to 7% growth in 2026. Melbourne is tipped to growth or lead with 6.6% housing price growth in 2026. Interest rates are dropping to 2.85% by the end of 2026, adding tens of thousands in borrowing capacity and power. First-home buyers reforms are unleashing massive new demand for new people jumping into these areas. Infrastructure projects are creating predictable growth corridors, and the question isn't whether 2026 will be a boom year. Of course it would be. The question is, will you be ready to take the action? Because here's the brutal truth. In 12 months, there would be 2 types of people watching this video. The first group, they'll have bought the property in 2025, early 2026. They'll be sitting on tens and thousands of equity and be positioning for their next purchase. They'll be building generational wealth and aiming for a more comfortable retirement. And then there would be second group of people. They'll still be waiting. They'll still be analyzing. They'll still be, is it the right time? And they'll be watching prices climb further out of reach. You've spent 12 minutes with me today learning exactly what's coming. You have the data, you have the knowledge, you have the right approach, you have the strategies, you have real world case studies. Now's the time to decide, are you going to be an observer or a participant? If you're serious about building wealth through property in 2026, here is what I want you to do right now. Subscribe to this channel and turn on the bell icon. I'm breaking down market updates, suburb analysis, property investment strategies every single week. If you like the video, do share and comment. Share your strategies, share your view of whether 2026 is a boom or is not a boom. It's a when or a why. The only question that matters today for me is, will I be ready? I'm Moxin Reza. Let's build wealth together. Take care. Keep smiling. Keep investing. This is Mox checking out. Adios.